Mute.
Jerry's not here.
Yeah.
We are live with Dr. Politics and the Political Architect Show. In the missing block is Dr. Jerry Cave. He is just there's a parade, or he's in New Orleans, and they got those street.
This is like Hollywood Squares with a missing square.
Was there a funeral you had to go check outside the window or something like that? One of those street funerals in Louisiana?
You know, he's a little old. Sometimes the plumbing, he has to go run a little bit more often than the rest of us.
Nice, Irvine.
I think Jerry went to go watch the funeral. You know that happened.
By the way, speaking of things of water, you are complaining about rain. You people have no idea what rain is.
Rain?
Worst storm you ever had in Maryland, we call high humidity.
We have humidity here too, Jerry. How soon do we forget?
This sounds very much like a story that ends with, "In my day, I used to walk up 3 miles uphill."
Well, Jerry did. Yeah. Jerry
I was
did.
going to use that.
All right, wait a minute. Did we introduce everybody? I kind of lost track.
No, we have not. We're still just.
Well, we know Jerry's the old guy.
We were talking about Jerry and the funeral. You know where that's how they kill people in Louisiana.
Who is Jason?
Jason Stein.
Stein.
Hello, I've taken an absence of doing this, but I guess it's the first time I've done this in almost.
He was playing
I do play lacrosse. Lacrosse is usually on Friday nights, but now we're in the break of the season. Heading over to Ocean City tomorrow morning for a tournament, so looking forward to playing in the rain.
Know you episode of Dr. Politics, I guess.
Yes.
To wrap up, we're also joined by myself, Jackie Saxstein, Don Irvine, and Marcus Alzona. Now that that's done, what are we talking about today, Don?
All right. Well, we start off just a brief note to our countdown to the election. So we're now at 81 days, and that leads right into really the topic of the week. You know, things that have been buzzing around. This is Joe Biden finally made his selection, and for many of you guys were right on the numbers with this. Mark, I know Mark Unkefer and I had gone with Susan Rice. But many of you had gone with Kamala, not Kamala, but Kamala.
Camilla.
Harris. Kamala, as she officially says it is. And so here's the thing. Was this a good choice? Is it a bad choice? I mean, what's the feeling? Let's get some opinions.
It's a safe choice.
Jason's dead on. It's a safe choice. You know, he picked someone from California. California is already a very blue state. That's for him. And honestly, I was reading an article. She wasn't even his first choice. His first choice was Gretchen Whitmer, but he got a lot of pushback because she's not black. And then there was another group, the Bernie people, were really disappointed because they wanted Elizabeth Warren, who again is not black, and also
she's Native American,
too far left. So I think that she was a safe choice, and also I was forced to choose a black female choice.
Well, if he didn't open up his mouth, and said that's what I'm going to do, maybe he wouldn't have had to do that. He could have picked someone else. He could have picked Evan Bayh to be his running mate. That actually would have helped him in a red state. I mean, let me tell you, Kamala Harris does not help him in any of the red states at all. She does not move the needle for people in central Pennsylvania.
I think that they were hoping for is that this would help him regain favor with police officers. Except, I think that Kamala Harris is going to stand firm on the pro-Black Lives Matter side of things.
And they want to defund. They want to, here's the thing. They want to defund the police. Biden, they can call it whatever they want. They call it redistributing money from law enforcement to community, whatever, welfare and social, what do you call them? Not welfare, but social workers and so on. But it's all the same thing. It's called defunding
social justice.
And that is exactly what they do.
Wait.
Yes.
You missed the most important thing. You said, who did Biden pick for vice president? Who thinks Joe Biden is making any decisions these days? He's not going to make any. Hold on. He's not going to make any in the White House, and he's not going to make any on the way not to the White House, too.
What's the line on the fact that he makes it to the White House to Inauguration Day?
I think he'll make it, but I think he'll be in there maybe a couple months before he steps down.
Will he be like Chester Harris?
Wait a minute. There's other things about Harris. First off, you kept saying about people that are not black. Kamala Harris is not very black. Her mother is Indian and her father is part Irish. So my question is, how does the black community feel when someone poses as black and runs on that basis? It's kind of like stealing their affirmative action place. So I'm really curious to see how the black community reacts.
I mean, it didn't hurt Elizabeth Warren at all. Nobody really seemed to care. So I doubt that's not going to be a non-issue.
I think they're more irritated. They would be more irritated by the number of black people she put into jail for minor marijuana charges and the like.
Is she actually Indian or is she West Indian? I mean, is she Indian or is she like West? Is it like it's like?
That she's Indian and she's the first South Asian.
So she's kind of both, Dwight. If you're from India, you're East Indian. If you're from the Caribbean, you're West Indian.
Yeah.
So she's East-West Indian.
East-West, okay. I like that road.
Now, to Jackie's point, to help her with the police, she could have put Dick Tracy on that with her, and she's still never going to get a policeman's vote or a policewoman.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go back to a couple of things that Dwight was saying in terms of, that he said he was going to pick a black woman. I mean, how he really started this out was that he made a commitment to pick a woman. And I think, what I want to know too is that if you feel like, did Biden box himself in there into a corner, because of the support he had from Clyburn and a lot of the older black Democrats to basically take that and not make it just a woman, but a black woman. And then the other part of this is that, Dwight, you were saying how this doesn't really help him.
No,
the vice president, it used to be that selecting a vice president was kind of a strategic move for you to help pick up votes and kind of lock down other parts of the country that you as the presidential nominee may not have. You marry your strengths together and then you have a wider base. This picking Harris doesn't really do that for him, right? Because California's already go. I mean, there are states, any place that Kamala Harris was strong in, they already had that. Biden, they were kind of already equal on that. And also, what about the fact that, he picked not only somebody who was an opponent that had attacked him pretty vigorously during the debates, but failed as a candidate, failed miserably as a candidate. She dropped out by December.
She was just as bad as Martin O'Malley. Didn't make Iowa.
Not that. She thinks he's a racist, and I guarantee you that position has not changed.
And the whole Me Too movement where she says she believes the accusers of him.
Not anymore.
She believes his accusers of sexual assault. She believes that he's a racist, and she's only sucking it up and saying yes and kissing his ass because she knows that if he gets elected, she's going to be president.
Well, Democrats think that she's going to be great against Mike Pence. I mean, who believes that?
Mike Pence is going to mop the floor with her.
I think it's going to depend. I think that we've seen it in the past where, depending on who's moderating the debate, they tend to throw very softball questions to the candidate, for the Democratic side. So I think that depending on what questions they ask and how they frame them, there's a way that the candidate spins it so that for the Democratic.
Yeah, because it'll just be like different things of substantive debate versus just trying to get some sound bites out of this, and then people don't watch it and instead just see the headlines. Oh, Pence said this against et cetera, et cetera. To go also about this election, I think I've mentioned it before, but the Rasmussen July 2020 full month job approval summary for national likely voters has 36% of the black likely voter vote or population approves of the job that Trump is doing. So a lot of this is trying to head off a mass defection, or at least a significant enough defection by one of the traditional Democratic support groups.
And you know who the last Republican who got that high numbers, Jerry? Was
Marcus just hit the most important fact, that if Trump can make inroads in the black community, he's not going to get 36%. But if he gets anywhere close to 20%, it not only seals the election for him, it will destroy the current version of the Democratic Party.
Hey, Jerry, in 1972, President Nixon and Vice President Spiro Agnew, one of our greatest governors of the great state of Maryland, gave us the second span of the Bay Bridge. But here's the thing.
Where's Mark when we need him?
Nixon got 32% of the black vote, and that decimated that George McGovern Hubert Humphrey ticket. By the way, these people are making Hubert Humphrey look like Kamala Harris makes Hubert Humphrey look like a right-wing radical, and as Joe does for George McGovern, makes George McGovern look like some warmonger.
To wrap this topic up, Kamala Harris checks the box of being white or a black and a female, which I think had to happen because the woke left would not tolerate 2 white men on their ticket this year.
Well, you know something.
I would like to add this. What we're talking around is when will we have the first woman president? And since I'm usually right, as these other people can attest, Jackie, I will tell you right now, the first woman president will be Governor Kristi Noem in 2024.
No, it's going to be when we get to clone Jean Kirkpatrick, Jerry.
And I will put money on that.
No, 2024 is going to be Mike Pence or Marco.
Oh, I pray that's not the case.
Mike Pence is awesome.
Is the worst. He's a great guy. He'd be a great president. But that guy is the worst speaker. Whenever he talks, he has an anguished look like I have, like he's passing a kidney stone. The guy is terrible speaker. And I don't know how. I don't know any Irishman that's that bad a speaker except for him.
All right. Well, we have.
I think Pence. I actually like Pence overall too, and I don't think he's really that bad a speaker. But I don't think he's really exciting. He doesn't energize. He doesn't energize anybody. But he is a great guy.
Silent Calvin Coolidge.
That's back then. We have to look at now. What are people looking for now? And I want to just ask Jackie. This question about the vice presidential debate. Are you going to tell me? Are you trying to tell me that the media, that the moderator, is not going to ask that question about? Do you believe Joe Biden's accusers now? Or why did you call him a racist?
It doesn't depend who's moderating it, because I would love to see them ask, 1, do you still believe the accusers? And 2, because she's been saying that Kavanaugh needs to step down, it's the same thing going on here. And 2, do you still believe that Joe Biden is a racist for his crime bill and for the busing and all these things that you said on the debate stage? Do you still stand by that?
Actually, she said, I don't believe you're a racist, but you did work with them. And the thing that you can't count on from Pence, because he's too deep, dipped, and nice, is Pence should ask that question and not wait for the moderator.
By the way,
he probably won't do that.
Trump definitely will.
By the way,
I definitely agree with you, Jerry, though, in terms of Pence. I think that's going to be part of the issue, is that he's too nice. He's a good guy. He's too much like a lot of the Republicans in Congress that we've known over the years, is that they're not really fighters. They don't really dig down and they don't fight back. The Democrats have controlled a lot of the agenda in the media for a long time because they'll say things, right? But the Republicans are like, oh, okay, fine. We'll just move on. And they have opportunities to fight back and they don't do it.
But see, Don,
in my article in The Atlantic, I pointed that out. That's a huge problem with the Republicans. They'd rather be nice losers than winners. And that's the way Donald Trump beat all of them.
Jerry, that's half the story. The other half of the story is Republicans are classier people. We're classier people. We're basically civil to people. We can turn off being a Republican, but these damn Democrats cannot, whether it be a high school reunion, whether it be a birthday party, they can't shut their damn Democrat nonsense up.
Right.
It doesn't matter where they are.
Right.
Yeah.
Winning is the only
That's true.
thing.
That is true. But my point is this. We're the good guys. It's kind of like, we are the Justice Society of America, while they are the, Legion of Doom.
The next election they win, they will fill Texas and Florida with enough illegal immigrants to flip those 2 states, and the whole country will become like California, a permanent Democratic Socialist majority. The country will be doomed. We cannot, this nice guy stuff is horse patootie.
But Jerry,
Jerry,
I don't see the Democrats winning, frankly.
So we're actually seeing. We gotta move on, Dwight. I'm sorry, but we're actually seeing a lot of firsts in this election, and the way that it's being run. Obviously, with Kamala being the choice for vice president.
First female person running for president.
But we're also seeing something like they announced today that Trump is going to be giving his acceptance speech from the White House lawn, and also that he will not be going dark during the Democratic convention, which typically the other side says that, we're not going to hold rallies or anything while the DNC has their convention, and vice versa. Trump has decided not to do that. So we're seeing a lot of firsts in this convention.
Well, it's actually not the first. I wouldn't say it's one of the first because let me tell you, the Democrat Party in 1992 did the exact same thing with the Republicans having their convention in Houston. Yeah, Ron Brown out there in Houston, who basically got murdered by Bill Clinton, was running around doing rallies against President Bush. He basically sent his little thugs and jackbooted thugs in to try to infiltrate the Republican National Convention in Houston. And
well, it's definitely something that's not common. So
I am glad we are doing this. I am glad that we are basically kicking them all over the place. When we're not going to shut up we're not shutting up anymore. Frankly, we've been quiet and complicit.
The only one that isn't shutting up is Trump. The rest of them are all.
And as I've always said, for a Democrat, compromise is when we cave in to their radical, wacky ideas. That is compromise to them.
And the Democrats are going to be too busy in their convention nominating another vice presidential candidate if it looks like Kamala Harris may not be eligible.
Okay. Now that you brought that up, okay, this is a problem if this winds up getting to be too much of a discussion issue, I think, for Republicans or whatever, which is this birtherism, thing that crops up.
The Constitution, Don.
She was born in the United States.
Her parents
born in the United States. You can challenge it all you want. She's born in the United States. It's irrelevant, really, about her parents because the Constitution gives her, and I think it's. Look, whether or not you can believe whatever you want to believe on this, I don't really care about that. But I think it's a terrible, terrible look for Republicans to go down that rabbit hole at this point in time. We should push that off and not deal with that. We've got a lot better things to do and a lot more things we can attack.
I mean, Joe Biden thinks he's an immigrant because he thinks Scranton's another country. He immigrated to Delaware, as an immigrant. I mean, Joe Biden, that's how senile he is.
We don't even need to entertain this rabbit hole. It's not worth going down for us or for any other Republican.
Right.
When Thomas Eagleton had to leave, it was terrible for McGovern. It's not something we need to campaign on, but it's a legality that they're going to have to deal with, and it's not as simple as where you're born, Don.
But it's just something that we can't. This is something that we don't need to muck up this election any more than it.
This election is about capitalism versus communism. It basically, do you want a job or do you want a handout? That is the decision that's facing Americans in November.
Don't say that. There's a lot of people that just want the handout.
Jerry, I'm going to disagree with you for probably the first time this evening.
What?
I don't think Americans are sitting around.
I'm writing it down.
Americans do not want a handout.
Real Americans don't.
They want a hand up, not a handout.
Listen,
folks.
That would be the American ideal, Dwight. But we know full well. Look, if that was the case, Dwight, to me, then why were these people so willing to take that $600 extra and just stay home?
Of their
stay home and not go back to work.
And
they were happy to have the handout.
And now they're going to get $400 extra. Another
maybe.
That's if Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer prevent Americans from getting that extra $400, or if they prevent the $1,200 going to Americans in need that make less than $75,000 less, which I think is a criminal. And the tax holiday, I'm sorry, why is the cutoff $100,000? Why can't it be like $220,000, frankly? Or $250,000.
But the payroll tax holiday, remember, on a lot of these things, payroll taxes are only paid, certain parts of they're only paid up to a certain portion of your income anyway. When you earn above a certain amount, you're exempt from that anyway. Yeah, so that's why it has to be at the low. No, it's actually in the law in terms of like for the Social Security. It's like 137 or 175. Yep. There's a number in there, and then after that, you earn every dollar you earn after that, you're not paying the Social Security tax.
No, but you're paying AMT on that.
Because they've been expanding that because they can, they need more money for the trust fund and everything like this.
And but
the payroll tax holiday, as Mark and I, we've discussed previously on the show, it's a targeted thing, and it only affects those that are actually having on the payroll. If the idea is to help others. All these 20 million or so unemployed, that is not helping them. That payroll tax does not help them. And there's a lot of other things that are kind of mucked up about this right now that aren't clear about the payroll tax as to, is this a suspension? Is this a deferral? Or is this a total elimination for a while? That hasn't been really clear. The unemployment thing was interesting because what Trump did was he's like, to hell with Nancy Pelosi and all the steam, just all the stonewalling on this. And he goes and he signs this executive orders and says, okay, we're going to go this. And he's using FEMA funds, to do this. Now, one of the issues is that even at $300 and then getting the states to kick in $100 extra, that's only going to last based on what they've learned, maybe 4 to 5 weeks. So, it's a temporary patch. But
you gotta look at Donald Trump's brilliance. He comes in and he goes, they're not going to do anything for you. I got $400. He is established that he's got their interest. Then for all the working people that have not had any of that benefit and almost resent that they've had to do this and get nothing, he says to them, you won't have to pay that 7% FICA tax. And when I get elected, I'm going to do away with it for good. It is a brilliant sales pitch.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. Okay, maybe it's just me, because
it is
just you. Because
it is just you.
Why do I have to? Why doesn't he also eliminate the AMT? Why doesn't he do it for all Americans? Why just selected Americans? Why is it
that's where the voters are? The voters are paying the FICA tax. There's more people down there than there are up there.
Yeah, but Dwight, you make a good point, Dwight, though, about the AMT. I mean, that is something that we really need. We need to address that at some point, and because that thing is a monster for people. It has crept up on a lot of people who caught them off guard. They weren't indexing it for inflation. They weren't doing, and so it's it's one of the worst policy things you could have in the tax code.
Criminal when you have to write a check for $20,000, $30,000 to Uncle Sam to pay for God knows what. I wish I could earmark that money
I want to see what Marcus has to say here.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, whereas I can agree on some of the general policies. I mean, that's not I guess that's not an argument that we need to have in general. I mean, on here, of course, this discussion, yes, I'm saying, where the focus isn't on getting, the focus is on how to get the people through and beyond the virus, the shutdowns, and how to get the economy rolling again, and giving something temporarily for a lot of people who are out of work or who are on this sort of borderline is important. But as I think we've discussed in previous weeks, structuring it such that the emphasis is on getting back to work, that should be one of the goals. So having something permanently in there, that would help in the long run, that would be good. Even talking about the AMT, I think everything should be tuned on how do you get small businesses, first of all, to not go out of business, and second of all, to get running again.
Excellent
and get
point.
people
right.
And that's sort of the focus.
Right. And the AMT is not a campaign issue. That is a something that comes down the line. If Trump gets reelected and whatnot, he gets a Republican Congress at some point, et cetera, you can try to change that. But I think Jerry makes a good point about Trump and the brilliance of what he did here with all of this, because it really flipped the script to a large degree, I think, with Nancy Pelosi, because here she was, she's out here screaming, people are going to die if we don't do anything, right? So Trump says, okay, fine, you aren't doing anything because you won't talk to the Republicans in the Senate and try to solve this problem. So I'm going to go and try to solve this problem, or at least try to bring you to the table. And, you know, Chris Wallace asked her, did you make a mistake? She can't admit to that. She can't admit that they made a mistake. She has been caught in this thing. And you know, what is she doing now? She says, well, look, you know, we told the Republicans that if they came, you know, if they go up $1 trillion, we'll go down $1 trillion. What is that? No.
Yeah.
There's no need for the Republicans to go up $1 trillion to meet them.
And that's a great point, Don. Not only does Trump come out looking great, they look terrible. So the contrast goes like this. And none of this is important about policy and almost isn't important about what it does. The only thing that's important is what does Donald Trump do or say to get reelected? Because if you think Joe Biden is going to bring the economy back.
By the way, here is, so speaking of Nancy Pelosi, here is a card for Dr. Sloan. He's a plastic surgeon in Burbank. Nancy, I'm going to put this in the mail to you. Okay? Maybe you could use some of that money and
be nice to Nancy. She's from Baltimore. You like Baltimore. So I want
to circle back to my original point that I was bringing up with the
fact
that
probably when Baltimore was nice, when dinosaurs roamed the earth.
So
it still has its nice parts.
Let Jackie get her point in here. Come on, okay.
No, my point with Trump not going silent during the DNC convention is that we've seen the abysmal numbers that Biden has had for his rallies. So I'm curious to see if more people tune in to watch Trump that week than they do to see Biden's acceptance speech.
Hey, look, more people will probably tune in to watch us than to tune in to watch Biden. How about that?
We've already got better numbers than MSLSD.
The worst thing ever said on this program makes more sense than anything Biden or Harris ever said.
But I want to go back to what Jerry said. Talk about the economy a little bit, because the thing is that there is no way in my mind that the Democrats should be running on we can make the economy better, and yet that was what they did, right? They come out on their first joint appearance, and they're using their pit bulldog or whatever you want to call her, and Kamala Harris, and she comes out there and she says, he inherited this economy, one of the greatest economic expansions in history from Obama, Biden, and he's running into the ground. It's like, are you kidding me? I mean, you're going to blame the way the economy went down on policies of Donald Trump?
I want to tell you something. On Facebook, I have had pinko people believe that the economy, when it was doing well, was Biden. It's not the longest, it was the slowest recovery. And they also believe, they go, oh yeah, well, what do you think of the economy now? I go, you mean you're blaming that on Donald Trump? And they go, yeah. So there are people out there that's stupid.
There are.
Is that going to be the case for those people in the middle that aren't ideologues and that might vote for us?
I tell you this, Jerry. This is what it comes down to, and this is why I think. Well, this is why President Trump's going to win. I tell you why. Kamala Harris brings nothing to the rural Pennsylvania voter or the voters living in the Philadelphia suburbs or the Pittsburgh suburbs. Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, which is one of the suburbs of Pittsburgh. They don't want riots in their neighborhood and streets. They want their kids going to school. And you got to talk to an auto worker in Michigan. A lot of those UAW folks are also pro-2A. A lot of those guys are salt of the earth conservatives now. President Trump saved their jobs. They're not going to not vote. They're not going to vote for Joe Biden, who's going to send their jobs back to Mexico and Canada.
What blue-collar person in the Midwest, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, that voted for him last time that won't vote this time? Nobody. Yep. This election comes down to those 3 states plus Arizona, which is now a swing state, and it comes down to mail-in votes.
The problem is
mail-in votes, we lose that state.
And what's happening is states like Arizona, you've got all these foreigners coming from California that are coming there. They don't understand the culture of Arizona. They come there, oh, beautiful roads, taxes are low. Oh, let's turn this into California 2.0 on steroids. That is the problem. I really wish when people immigrate to one state to another, they wait a few years before they understand the culture, the way of life. We see this in Florida, where you got these people from Maryland, New York, New Jersey. They moved to Melbourne. They moved to Brevard County, which is the reddest county in eastern Florida, where every level of power is controlled by Republicans. It's like the anti-Montgomery County. And you have these people moving there. I really, honestly, one of my neighbors moved down to Vieira, and I go, you're not allowed to vote there for 5 years, right?
I said,
well, we just let the Democrats vote twice, or the dead people vote, right, or whatever, right?
I said something like that on Facebook, and in 5 hours, my 7-day banishment in jail is going to be up.
Really, you got banished? Congratulations, Jerry.
Yeah, I said,
how is it like being Facebook?
Democrat vote on Wednesday. They didn't like that.
All right. Since Jerry mentioned it, we'll go down to the mail-in voting issue and talk about that for a little bit.
That's the issue.
That's because that is a big issue here. There's a lot of jawboning, lots of accusations flying back and forth with mail-in voting in terms of what President Trump has said about the Postal Service, what he said about mail-in voting and things like that. But what was interesting today was that the Postal Service said they warned, 46 states that the votes may not, the ballots may not get to where they need to be on time. The votes may not get counted because of mail volumes and the protocol, kind of the whole delivery scenario of how the post office works their deliveries and everything like that. And I thought that was kind of interesting as to what they said there. I mean, and the attacks on the Postmaster General, I think, are extremely unwarranted. The Democrats are trying to tie him into as being this mega donor for Trump, and that's why he's doing all these things, because he's trying to sabotage mail-in voting. Obama said Trump is trying to kneecap the Postal Service. Look, anybody who's been around any number of years knows the Postal Service has been in trouble for a long period of time, and this Postmaster General, DeJoy, he's a logistics guy. He built his own company. He's a smart businessman. He is trying to actually do something to try to fix the Postal Service. But we've got the unions. We've got a lot of things going in there.
So Trump is right to do anything to damage the concept, regardless. I'm a big fan of the post office. I've mailed tens of millions of pieces of mail. They do a good job with it.
I think
the issue comes down. How many people here have run for office and gone door to door? Good. When you look at the voter roll, you look at that house and you've got two or three different families registered. If you do mail-in voting, they're all going to get ballots mailed to them. It's not like absentee where you have to send it. And if you look what they did in California with vote harvesting, they turned Orange County completely blue. That's the issue. You have hundreds of thousands of people on the voter rolls that aren't there anymore. And that is enough. We won Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan by a few 100,000 votes. They can steal that from us from the.
Now, let me just say a few things about the post office. Hey, Marcus, do you remember what the price of stamps were when we were in high school? Less than 20.
Probably a penny or two.
25 cents is what they were. Our senior year stamps were 25 cents because when I was sending out those graduation announcements, it was 25 cents. Okay, stamps today are 50 cents or more.
55
cents.
Looks like a new investment opportunity right there.
Other than the primary, I can't tell you the last
I used to be able to buy a soda for 55 cents.
But I think that one of the arguments that they've made is that the Postal Service hasn't kept up with the competitive rates as far as shipping rates. They're doing it cheaper.
If they would get the shipping, their shipping prices are really good. I've used them to do overnight shipping, and the last 3 times I've done overnight priority shipping, it's taken them 2 days. Why could I just use priority and send it for half the price?
Well, and the other thing is, and this really all ties together, is one of the things that the Democrats are pushing for in the next stimulus package is like $1 trillion for the Postal Service.
I hate to say it, Amazon should be running the Postal Service. They're a hell of a lot more efficient.
Amazon is running it. They're getting too low of prices. The reason they want to do that, Jackie, is they want to bail out the pension plan for the Postal Service.
Right. And I think, if people, but I think
union voter grab.
The average person who doesn't know that might think, well, they want this money because it's going to go towards mail-in voting and helping it be more efficient, when that's likely not the case.
Going to solidify more Democratic voters under the unions.
Yeah, and to your point, Jerry, about which is a very good one in terms of the number of registered voters in a household when you just mail out all these ballots and things like that, is that I had that happen, for Maryland, because I had somebody who had been living with us temporarily for a little while. I got her ballot. She's moved to New Hampshire, in the year and a half or whatever it's been. I'm still getting my son who lives in Utah but never re-registered anywhere, I don't think, and I had my wife. But what was there to prevent me except my own honesty of filling in the ballot for the other person signing off on mailing it? How are they going to know?
And Don, we're the good guys. We don't do that.
I saw that a person was in state of Washington and they'd moved to Texas. They forwarded their ballot to Texas.
That's right.
Well, we had a woman, she ran for Congress, but she also voted in Maryland, and then she also voted in Florida.
Twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, did she go to jail eventually? Was that
No, she didn't.
Nobody goes to jail. She didn't go to jail.
But they fined her, did something to her, right? I mean,
she got a fine.
They made her withdraw from the race.
A slap on the wrist.
I thought we were talking for the last like three and a half years about election security and not having,
outside
mysterious things happening to it, and all of a sudden now let's just stick everything in the mailbox. And
as the postal union just endorsed Biden today,
right?
Do you remember when the issue at hand was whether or not people
is anybody surprised that they endorsed Biden?
Right, we moved so far beyond people should have to show a photo ID to be able to vote, and has moved towards.
Actually,
it's really outrageous that you can't show a photo ID in Maryland, or at least in Montgomery County. You can't. You're not allowed to do that. It's ridiculous.
How dare you try to identify that I am who I say I am?
Yeah.
You know what we could do actually to solve a lot of this is we could issue PIV ID cards. You got to stick it in, put in your PIN, and if you forget your PIN, that's your problem.
I think we should register scan voting.
Listen, the Democrats, not only did the Democrats flip-flop on what Marcus brought up, they flip-flop on illegal immigration, all this stuff. Whatever is convenient for them to gain power, they will do whatever. And that was a great point, Marcus.
Yeah, hey, Jerry.
I'm never saying anything nice about you again, Marcus.
Hey, Jerry, too. The other thing, too, is that, just also when you mention those topics, those subjects, what about the difference between Biden and Harris in their positions on some of these issues? They don't match.
It would be interesting, but Biden isn't really on the ballot. The people on the ballot on November 4th are Donald Trump and not Donald Trump.
Yeah,
but Don, to your point, it doesn't matter because for now on, Kamala Harris, if Joe Biden were to get elected, until between now and November, she's his yes man. She's going to agree with anything he says because that's her job right now.
And those are questions, though, in terms of their policy differences that should be asked at the debate, which we know if it's hosted by some liberal network, isn't going to happen.
By the way,
assuming he makes it to November.
Yeah.
Before dropping out. I'm not.
I thought you were not dropping dead.
No.
Americans, we care about the health of our elected officials.
You know what, Jackie
is in the high-risk group,
Jackie is touching on a really good point. This is a way for people to vote for a woman for president indirectly.
Right.
The people that are like all up for a woman president. And that's why I'd like to see Donald Trump send Pence back to the pub and put Kristi Noem on the vice.
No, you don't do that.
There was a quote on the 5 today from President Obama, former President Obama, basically saying something about Kamala Harris and who she debates, whether that be Mike Pence or whoever else. So I think he might be thinking, Jerry, what you're thinking, that there's a possibility that President Trump trades Mike Pence for somebody else. I don't think that's going to happen.
Not at this stage of the game.
No,
why not?
Well, Jerry, I'll tell you why, okay? Jerry, I'll tell you why. John McClane tried that with Sarah Palin. Look at the way the media treated Sarah Palin.
That's the only energy. That was the only energy he had in his campaign.
My point, Jerry, is not that. Look how you think the media would be any nicer if we had Kristi Noem or Nikki Haley on the ticket, they'd be vicious.
I love you, Dwight. I worship the ground you walk over. 5 days I worship the ground. But do not put words in my mouth.
I do not put anything.
Saying it's going to make the media nicer or get the feminazis to vote for us. I'm saying it's a brilliant move. And I know it's brilliant because none of you like it.
I'm not saying I don't like it.
I'm saying I don't like it.
I would be so much. I'm definitely voting for President Trump, but if Nikki Haley was on the ticket with him, I mean, I am all for that because obviously she's my pick for 2024. I think she'd make a fantastic, first female president. I think that she brings a lot to the table and has all the experience needed. I can see it being a smart move, but I don't see it being a move that he's going to make.
Look,
2024 was Nikki Haley's to lose, and she lost it.
How do you figure?
Huh?
How?
Yeah, how do they figure that?
She's weak on these issues. Listen, in 2024, the only case for Nikki Haley is that it's going to be a rejection election. Even Donald Trump will be sick of Donald Trump in 2024. So we want the anti-Trump to be our anti-Trump. That's the case.
So you want Governor Hogan?
Nikki Haley.
Yeah. Governor Hogan doesn't make it out of Iowa, though.
Go, Larry, go. Go, Larry, go.
Go.
I'm for Hogan. No,
he's not going to
I'd
get
support
I
Hogan.
would, definitely.
Hogan is not going to win Iowa.
I want to hear from Jerry what issues Nikki Haley was weak on, because from where I'm sitting, like when she was ambassador to the UN, she was the only friend Israel had, and she did not let anybody stop her from that. Everything that I've seen her speak on, she has been firm and did not take bullshit from anybody.
So I am going to claim my status as a senior moment. I cannot remember the exact issues, but I think I'm pretty good. She was soft on some key ones. But you know what, Jackie? We have a new relationship. Jackie and Jerry, let's put it together. Let's put both of them on the ticket.
I'll say this about the Biden-Harris, ticket too. That kind of a football analogy that, in college sports, we see a lot of these things where on football where they have the coach and then they have another coach, which is now designated as the coach in waiting, kind of a transition. So, when this guy retires or whatever, this guy's going to get the job. And so you have this, it's just going to be very fluid. You're going to have consistency. I see this as something similar, is that really it's Joe Biden and the president in waiting in Kamala Harris. And that's what a lot of people will be looking at. I mean, she's going to be the president in waiting or the shadow president. A lot of us, I think we know that she's the one, if they get elected, she's the one who's going to be running things. It's not Joe.
She's going to move into Pennsylvania Avenue.
Good metaphor, Don. And I never want to say anything nice about you again either.
By the way, how many of you guys think if Joe Biden, heaven forbid, if he's elected, he'll go to the Naval Observatory, because that's where he lived for 8 years when he was vice president. He thinks he'll still be living there.
I know. Well, Biden
he'll be in the assisted living place next to Sibley Hospital.
St. Elsewhere, St. Elizabeth's.
No, Biden has referred to himself multiple times as a transition president. That's what he kept saying. So I think that comes to as a shock to no one.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's transition from assisted living to the full-blown nursing home.
All right. I want to go back to something that Jackie had touched on a little bit earlier, which was kind of the Democratic National Convention and stuff like that, because that's coming up next week. But what I want to ask the panel here is that, AOC got a speaking slot, right? But I didn't see this until afterwards. I thought, oh my, they're elevating this progressive leftist, they're putting her on national stage. But the left is all, they're apoplectic because she's getting 1 minute and it's pre-recorded, while other speakers will be going live. Did they just slight her? Or what happened? Were they just kind of throwing out a little bit of
her by saying she's not going to get a position at all, and then they said, all right, we'll throw you a bone, you get a minute pre-recorded. I don't think that dampens her temper at all. And honestly, I'm kind of counting on it because I want her. And like I said, this is my dad's position, is that she and the rest of the squad are going to go so rogue and make themselves look so crazy that it helps the Republicans. Like, look at these crazy people that the left is putting, giving us a platform.
Well, that's the thing, though. I mean, that was the thing, Jackie, that I want to ask is that giving her a minute is just that this is, and pre-recorded is their control mechanism. The DNC, they know that they have to address this side of the party. But if they give her 5 minutes of live time, game over.
Who knows what she's going to say?
That might be better because she turns on them and starts bashing Pelosi and all. That's great. When they eat their own, we look great.
Listen.
I hate to say it, Jackie. They are actually more disciplined than we are. Like,
yes.
If we go after our own, they circle the wagons. What's going to happen is she'll have her moment with a great big portrait of Mao and Karl Marx and Joe Stalin behind her with the Chinese flag flying, and she'll give her little speech about how
the Democrats are disciplined and always on the same message, the Republicans don't even know they're supposed to message.
But that's not the case anymore. We're seeing the Democrats.
No, just look at the State of the Union speeches. Pelosi's got them on a short leash. They know exactly when to stand, when to sit, when to clap.
What does Joe Biden disagree with with AOC?
We're seeing a break in the Democratic Party. We're seeing a split between the classic Democratic Party that you guys have seen and the more woke left Democratic Party. What you're forgetting is AOC is not a politician, and she's already done things. They had a sit-in Pelosi's office when she had first taken office.
That's all political theater.
You
know what? The old Democrats that you're referring to, Jackie, do you know what they're called? They're called
Democrats.
They're called dinosaurs.
I call Republicans. But wait a second. I want to get this before Donald Trump beats me to it. He's the genius of branding, coming up with names for people like Low Energy Jeb. And now I've got the one for AOC. She's a Minute Maid, just like the orange juice, but not as sweet.
No, but I definitely think that we're seeing a shift and a divide in the Democratic Party. They're all calling for younger people to take in positions. They're looking for more radically left change. And I think that there are people, even in the Democratic Party, these older people who have been in their seats for a while, who are going to resist that. And I think it's going to become
have not seen resistance so far, Jackie.
Jackie,
I don't know any of them that are speaking out against any of this radical stuff.
Jackie, you have a point there, because I know today's Democrat Party, it's not the Democrat Party of Jimmy Carter, frankly. It's not the Democrat Party of even Bill Clinton. I mean, God knows it's not the party of Zell Miller, Joe Lieberman, Scoop Jackson, Pat Moynihan, sometimes Sam Nunn. And other old school, the JFK Democrats.
But I think
these have all become Campbell Soup Kid Kennedy Democrats, where they're very woke.
Ted Kennedy Democrats.
No. They're even worse. It's like, who is it? Robert Kennedy's kid, the redhead Campbell Soup Kid that gave the rebuttal.
But the old Democrats, those classic Democrats, they realize that if they keep letting these newer people move so far to the left, they will never swing another moderate voter again. And I think that they realize
that. If they win this election, Jackie, they don't have to.
Because we'll all be in concentration camps, Jerry.
They will win. They will, the next election cycle, Texas and Florida will be blue and game over. They don't have to. They only got to win one more.
See, I'm not that.
What about the expansion of the progressive left in the Democrat Party at this point in time? They're going to gain a couple more far lefties that have been knocking off these people, these incumbents, like in New York and and things like that. How
AMC did.
Yeah, and I mean, how does Pelosi handle this growing faction, right? How do the Democrats deal with this growing faction?
That's what I'm saying. Is I think there's going to come a point where there's so many progressive leftists in these positions of power that they overtake the current, what we know as the Democratic Party, and they move further and further left. And
a lot of the old line Democrats like Jerry Nadler, Chucky Schumer, they're all adopting the AOC positions.
Right, because they don't want to get kicked from their positions from not being woke enough.
The time for resistance.
They're so old. By the time that happens, they'll be gone. And they don't care what happens to anybody else.
The Democratic Party is moving far too left, and one of two things is going to happen. One, it's going to alienate too many people who are left-leaning, but not that left-leaning. or two, I think that as my generation, which I actually really fear, my generation grows up, and it might just be that college bubble that I was in. It just seems like everyone isn't, like, all these people that you're seeing in the looting and rioting, they're roughly my age, if not younger. And that's what I'm afraid of, is a whole generation of progressive woke people.
And they're going to like that. Listen, there's only one way to stop this. The only way the Democrats can get away with being this far to the left is that they have a block of voters that don't vote on anything to do with what we've been talking about. You have 85 to 90% of the black community, majority of the Asian community and Hispanic that vote against us because they say we're racist. Probably half of the black community is conservative. The Asian community makes me look like a pinko. They are culturally and physically than I am. And half or more of the Hispanic community, which is matriarchal, is conservative. But they don't vote on these issues. They vote against us because we're supposed to be racist. That's why if Donald Trump, by bringing them into better jobs, et cetera, can push to the maybe 20% or over, if he gets 20 to 25% at some point, then that deconstructs that whole thing. The racist stuff costs us those votes, and it costs us 10 or 15% of the white vote too.
And he's making that argument time and again. He said, I have done more for Black America than even the Black president. And he has the numbers to prove it.
Yeah, but they've been winning on the race issue for 50 years.
Which is a shame, because people are clearly not reading the statistics to go with that.
Right. So, Jerry, I want to ask you a question, Jerry. So, I think you're right on and basically on this whole race issue. What is the reason that we, the Republicans, conservatives, whatever, are being branded as racist, to this? I mean, who's responsible for that? Is it the media? Is it just Republicans not fighting back enough and not giving a good enough message? What's responsible for that?
It started when a great person made a terrible decision for the wrong reason. It was Barry Goldwater, stuck up for states' rights, but states don't have the right to be wrong. And it goes back to there, and they flipped it. And when they figured out they couldn't keep blacks from voting, they flipped it. They did a great job. And the media, but the main problem is the Republican members of Congress and the Senate are the most gutless, inarticulate people on the planet. They haven't got the guts to go into those communities and make their case, and because they're too afraid they'll say the wrong thing, be labeled a racist, which is a personal, professional, and a social death sentence. And they're not articulate enough. They're not gutsy enough. And the other thing is, does anybody remember a football coach named Barry Switzer? Yep. He brought Oklahoma back. They said, how do you do it? He said, black people are better athletes. I've recruited blacks at every position. Everybody else had black wide receivers, running backs, and defensive backs. And he brought Oklahoma back from a bad season, which is losing 2 games. We should recruit more.
The Turks, if they could be so lucky, 2 losses.
Like Herbert Kane and Ben Carson and these other people. And we need to make that pitch 24/7, 365 days a year by everybody and not one guy.
Oh, Jerry, I'm going to tell you a little story.
What do you know about minorities, Dwight?
I know. Jerry, in 1992, I went to talk to kids at a community college in Queens, New York. I was with the King campaign, and we were doing stuff with the Bush campaign in 92. Not King campaign, D'Amato campaign. 92, I went there, and the hostilities there, I went there with an open mind. I was agreed with hostilities. I was lucky to, it's like threatening, it's like the first question I get is, why did George Bush take away my money? George Bush didn't take any of your money, you idiot. Education is a local issue, and scholarship funds are not controlled by the president, It's like
problem. I told you, don't go anywhere without me. Why did you?
I didn't know you in 1992, Jerry.
It doesn't absolve you of your crime.
You're still at Tulane, working on your doctorate.
All right, let's go on to something else here too. Once again, also just touched on just recently here. So we have we've been going through this phase of after the death of George Floyd, Rayshard Brooks. There's been an ongoing series of protests / riots. Seattle, Portland, Chicago being probably the biggest hotspots. Yeah, I mean, there's been all
that was the shocker of Salt Lake City. I mean,
but they tamped that down. I mean, compared to what happened in Seattle, Portland, and what's going on in Chicago, I mean, that's not even anywhere equivalent, or even in Minneapolis. I mean, there was an article, I think, on Fox News today that just said they talked about the tremendous cost to the cities of having to try to clean up after this and deal with this, right? But what about what happened here in Chicago too? So they went to the Magnificent Mile, right? Is that what they call it, or Miracle Mile? The big shopping, along there in Chicago, all the fancy shops and things like that. They've looted them. BLM protesters saying like, well, look, this is reparations. These stores have insurance and things like that. For heaven's sakes, they even smashed the windows of a Ronald McDonald House. That's just crazy.
It was terrible. And they should all be ashamed of themselves.
They should. And here's the thing. I'm sorry, I know this. Some people may think it's a bad word, but President Nixon was right. Law and order. It's time to bring in law and order. Because something. We are not. We are a civil society of laws. We don't reward rioters and basically people who don't want a job, who basically just want to hang out. I mean, look at this in D.C. It's like you got that whole Black Lives Matter Plaza. It's like that's a street. That's a major thoroughfare. Are you going to keep that like that when things get back to normal?
Let me ask you all a question.
Yes.
Where was the conservative, the Republican with guts that's come out and condemned this stuff and said the whole Black Lives Matter is a great big lie? They don't give a damn about black lives that get aborted, that get murdered in their cities. And 85% of racial crime is black on white.
I believe a guy who could be the next president, Governor DeSantis, came close to saying. Governor DeSantis came close to saying the same thing, Jerry. He wasn't as eloquent as you are. DeSantis was not as eloquent as you just were, but he did condemn.
I've seen it multiple times. I've seen Republicans coming out and basically saying
Governor Ron DeSantis.
Three.
Okay, Ron DeSantis.
You shouldn't have to try. You shouldn't have to try to remember.
Governor Kemp. And
dead for 20 years. Great human being.
What's that?
He's a great human being, but he's been dead for 20 years.
No, Governor Kemp of Georgia.
Ryan Kemp of Georgia.
Not the great Jack Kemp.
Let me give you guys an example. 1,500 miles away from you and 1,500 feet from me is West End Boulevard that used to be the New Basin Canal. They started digging it in 1838. They don't know if 5 or 25,000 people died in it because they didn't count and they didn't even bury them. They just took their bodies and shoved it into the levee. None of them were black because a slave cost $1,000 and you could get an Irishman off the boats in the Irish Channel for $1 a day. That is 25,000 dead people for 3 miles of canal. It dwarfs the transcontinental. Black people in America, whether they were slaves or not, have not had it any harder than anybody else. Everybody has had a hard time, and you know who did it to them? Their own.
All right, well, it's 7:58, so we're going to move into final thoughts. Let's start with Marcus.
Oh, final. Actually, I haven't thought. Yeah, skip me from right now.
We'll come back to Marcus. Jason. No? Oh my gosh.
Actually, I do.
Back to Marcus.
Back to Marcus.
So, I was on, if it's a thought or an interesting angle news report, it's the Montgomery County stopped its free COVID testing centers because they found, or the state of Maryland said that at least for a couple of them, they had questionable lab procedures. I think it from the hints in the news reports, it's like that they let it sit out too hot or something. I don't know. But so yeah, now all the county run free testing centers have been closed. we went actually on Monday to get tested, and so I don't think I'm going to get any results because
That's important.
That was like a personal thing. But I just thought that interesting. I'm like, oh, I wonder when we're going to get emailed our results. Oh, wait, they've just closed everything down. So, and of course, that was buried in the county executive's statement about, how we have to do mail-in voting and how, I don't know if private schools should be allowed to reopen. But we suspended for a while. Like he just like a little statement in the other things being against like reopening.
Did he talk about the guy that resigned?
It's my thought or complaint. And the sign, yeah.
Did he talk about it at all?
Marcus got poked in the brain for nothing. Right.
Okay, my final thoughts are a couple things. There's been an interesting week. A lot of things going on in my own life. A lot of craziness going on. But which has caused me to yell at all sorts of people, including slow drivers in the left lane, some friends and some enemies, and some Democrats. Well, a lot of Democrats, let's just be honest, But things will always get better, Like I've always said, at least it's not 1996, That
was a terrible year. It was the year before the world was graced with my presence.
No, that was a horrible year for a completely different reason. But my final thought, Jerry, can you read the title? This book was written not recently. This was written when I was working for Don at Accuracy in Media. I got this, Don, if you remember, at CPAC from the guys of the Conservative Book Club. This book was written in 92, but it is still true today. I think you can still get this book on Amazon. I highly recommend that.
It's Len Kolodny, right?
Yep, that's it. And I highly recommend, if you can find this book.
Just stop with that.
This book, let me tell you, this book was this thick. But when Ray saw all the pages, Ray goes, my friends aren't going to read that. So we got
this is where we need Ryan to kill the video and the audio.
Yeah. But this is a great book, fast read. It's only 100 pages, probably 50 pages of pictures. And here is, I just want to share real quick.
Why? Everyone tells over.
This guy was a real legend,
and just mute him real quick. You'll never know.
Yeah.
There you go.
Final thought.
And that's my final thoughts. Read a book.
All right. My turn? All right. So I want to just, in typical Montgomery County fashion style of how they don't know what the heck they're doing and have no answers to anything whatsoever when it comes to COVID. I ran to a friend of mine at the gym yesterday, and he happens to be on a county executive panel or group on that interfaith, religious interfaith things going on. And they had a town hall a few weeks ago with religious leaders and others to ask questions about the fact that the county had established these rules about no more than 25 people in a house of worship, and you had to have only one person for every 200 square feet. So they were asked, where do these numbers come from? And the county people couldn't really answer the question. Big surprise like this. And, this guy was pointing out to me, he says, there's a wide variety of religious houses of worship in the county, from small, like almost like the one school, one classroom type of thing like that. If you did the 200 square foot rule, you might get 3 people in there or something like that potentially, to a larger Baptist place where they apparently have 3 sanctuaries where they can do services in English, Spanish, and in Haitian, but because of the 25-person rule, they can only have 25 people in there, but this place is huge. And so they don't really know what they're doing. And the religious leaders who've been asked to give presentations about this, because the county doesn't know what they're doing, said, we're not touching this with a 10-foot pole because we don't want our people to get mad at us because the county is not giving us any direction anyway. So, Montgomery County, as usual, they don't know what the heck they're doing. And religious freedom, to a large extent, is being suppressed.
All right, I'm going to go next. Mine is that my token Jew statement for the week.
You are not a token, Jackie.
There was a historic deal made by President Trump this week, or he helped out between the UAE and Israel. And it's going to Israel has agreed to stop the annexations in the UAE. And I think that's tremendous progress and hopefully the start of the beginning of peace in the Middle East. And I just want to point out who brokered that agreement, President Trump. So any Jews out there who are still looking for a reason to vote for the president, and if Biden not being pro-Israel isn't enough for you, and it should be enough for you, that's definitely one of those reasons.
But Biden tried to steal that thunder, didn't he?
Of course.
Hold on. The Golan Heights is not enough reason to vote for Israel.
There's multiple reasons, but for some reason there's still Jews who are Democrats. All right, Jerry, and then we'll wrap up with Jason.
This may be the only time I'm shorter than the rest of you.
Thank you for your comments, Jerry. On to Jason.
All right, on that note. Oh, no, Jerry, you're good. You can still go. You go.
The reason I did not not been tested for COVID is because they do not yet have a curve. And if I've demonstrated anything in school taking tests, is that you need a curve for K to pass. And the other thing I think I've established very well for Jackie and Jason is you now know there's a good reason that, just like they said in Blazing Saddles on this show, no Irish!
Lovely.
I just thought there was an age limit for the COVID thing. That's all.
Hey, Jerry.
Dead man.
Hey, Jerry, is it true? I heard Tulane is going to endow basically you're getting a statue put on Tulane University as being one of the longest freshmen at Tulane?
No, but I want to tell you something. We had a debate with the people at GW, and I hear the illiteracy rate at GW has really collapsed. Congratulations.
Sorry, they don't have
Dwight, don't do this with me.
Jerry, we haven't met before today, but I'm a GW grad from last year. So
exactly.
I wouldn't have said that. I would have said that high school where he went.
That's fine. Jason, wrap us up.
And that's why I go to UMBC, because it stands for You Made the Best Choice.
Love it.
And then school's starting back up for me, so I'll remote all the time. So I just a little annoying on that, but I can't wait to get back together with everybody in person to do this. I mean, it's fun to do this online, but it's a lot better to do this in person.
Hey, Jason, pizza and politics
absolutely.
next week.
On that note, I guess that's it.
That's the show. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we will see you next Friday.